But here we are speaking about technology, and it's that very element, if you like, in the conversation that appears to be failing us. We'll try to reestablish that connection with Dan Buntman, who's head of strategy and compliance at a fintech company, Ozow. I hear that he's back now. Dan, as you were saying, ironically, as you were speaking about technology there, please continue making your point.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, there was a bit of a digital divide between us both at that point. Yes, I think it's largely what I was just to reflect back. It's largely a question of access, and access is about inclusion. And we very much believe that we should all be working together to widen that inclusion.
Yeah, and I think there is a term along those lines, digital inclusion. How much of a priority do you feel this is for a country like South Africa?
Oh, I think it's a huge priority. I think what COVID has shown us as we live life through a digital window, you know, those of us who've been lucky to have great connections and facilities, we've managed to ride the crisis a lot better than those of us who haven't. So I think it's a huge priority, and I think the crisis has shown that access for people via digital services is something that will grow and continue to grow. And although cash is growing, we see that the demand for cash and the move to digital as being just as great.
It's quite an interesting observation to make. And speaking about observations, how do we compare on the continent? I mean, Africa, or South Africa rather, is usually seen as an extension of Europe at the tip of the continent. Does that translate when it comes to, you know, again, access to things like the internet, especially in far-flung areas like rural parts of the country?
So I think in some ways we are probably ahead, but in many countries, especially like Kenya and Ghana, digital access is actually very, very prevalent. M-Pesa is a great success story in terms of digital money and solving problems for people that perhaps the financial system that had existed beforehand wasn't solving so brilliantly. I think it's very much different wherever you go. Some regions are very well served. I think particularly, as I mentioned, Kenya has great digital access, but there are other areas like Congo, which there is almost like a digital desert.
Yeah. I mean, what's also worth considering, of course, is that pushing for a cashless revolution, so to speak, during a pandemic like COVID-19 also poses the possibilities of swapping one danger for another. So yes, we don't want to be exchanging money so that we don't spread the virus, but there are also unique dangers to working and operating online.
So I think, yes, everything has pros and cons. Cybercrime is something everyone across the financial services industry, whether it's the banks or fintechs like ourselves, put as a top priority. At Ozow, we are proud to say we've never had any instance of fraud. And fraud is a big part of cybercrime, but I don't think, especially given, you know, recent history last week, data breach, that we'll ever be able to move away from that. I do think that no society will ever be truly cashless. At the same time, I think the risks and security and risk to bodily harm in terms of carrying cash for people who are afraid to move to digital or don't have access to bank accounts or bank cards. The move to digital cash is ever going to grow ever stronger and take people along with it. And I think for the better. I think we will, as an industry, as in a collective, continue to improve. But like all crime, I don't think we'll be able to eradicate cybercrime.
That considered then, I mean, I know, for instance, holding hard cash for many South Africans is more than just about the money. I wonder whether we can have this conversation without speaking about financial literacy, because, you know, there are real fears about how one would spend money that is digital versus how they'd spend the money if they could hold it.
I think that's a brilliant question and a brilliant point to raise. Yes. I think for me, a lot of that links to the access of credit and linking back to financial education, and something we take quite seriously, as do all players in the industry. I think it's a journey, and it's a growth journey. Cash is easily explainable, but there's some hidden elements of cash which people don't always track in terms of the cost of cash. We mentioned security, depositing cash, withdrawing cash, the risks of not depositing cash, keeping it under the mattress, and the security risk that brings. that is also part of education. And I think the transition probably is learning to see digital cash in the same way you see hard cash leaving your wallet, and learning to appreciate a wallet in a digital space, in a virtual space, that should be treated the same as it is in the physical space, while gaining all the benefits that digital space brings.
Interesting remarks indeed. Thanks very much for your time and your insights. Certainly appreciate your coming onto the AM report. Dan Buntman is head of strategy and compliance at fintech company Ozow. Dan, thanks very much indeed.